Happy Easter, everybody. Tekking101 here. There comes a time in every One Piece discussion person's life where they have to talk about Jory Bonney. She's the only female in the entire worst generation, and it seems like ever since day one with her, I don't know if you've got the same vibe that I did. Well, I don't know what kind of vibe you got from Jory Bonney, but overall, I got the kind of idea that Oda wanted to do something much bigger with her later down the line. Just the way that she talks about things involving, like, her past. She uses that phrase, I'll never forgive them, or I'll never forgive him. She uses that, like, quite a bit. So it really does seem like there's something else going on here later down the line, and I'm sure, Oda will eventually explain that when the time comes. But yeah, for right now, all we know is she's a very attractive young lady. Very, very attractive young lady. Ooh, I can use the Christmas Treasure Cruise ones. That's actually very appropriate right about now. We also know she has a devil fruit. It's most likely a paramecia, and it has the ability of age manipulation. We don't exactly know the name of it yet, but it could be the age fruit. I think that would make the most sense, or maybe the time fruit. It all depends if Oda, later down the line, really wants to introduce a devil fruit ability with the power to manipulate time, to, like, time travel, because I think that would break a lot of things, and you always have to be careful when writing fictional characters with that kind of ability. So if he's not going to do something like that, and the closest thing we're going to get is Bonney's fruit, then you might as well just call that the time fruit. Otherwise, it's the age fruit. She can manipulate her own age to make her very young or very old, or she can manipulate the ages of other people around her. We don't exactly know how she does this, but she is capable of affecting a wide array of, like, space around her. She was able to turn an entire squadron of Marines into either young children or elderly men. So yeah, it's something that's a very devastating ability if used correctly. I'm going to get into that later. And she also has the ability to eat a lot. And I know this is coming from One Piece, where you have characters like Luffy, who are able to just down, massive amounts of meat. But the thing with Luffy is that he's made of rubber, so when he eats, like, an entire truckload of meat, his body literally expands, and then he deflates later, goes into Gear 4th or whatever, burns up a lot of calories. The thing with Bonney, though, is that she can literally eat and eat and eat and eat with absolutely no visible change in her admittedly, voluptuous body. So that's the thing with that. Some people have actually stated, and this is even on the wiki, because she has the ability of age manipulation, she can actually control certain parts of her body, like how old they are, so that she can have the metabolism of a child if she really wants to, and that's the reason she can eat so much. And I'm just sitting there like, well, that even makes less sense. By that logic, a 5-year-old kid could eat like an entire truckload of pizza and everything, it would be able to digest just fine. I highly doubt that's how it works. But then again, keep in mind, this is One Piece, the same universe where Luffy loses a tooth and all he has to do to get it back is just drink a lot of milk. So, yeah, just go with the fantasy. It might have something to do with her devil fruit. It might just be a thing that Oda's throwing out there. She was shown consuming vast amounts of food even when she was a kid. So, whether it involves her devil fruit or not, you know what? Knowing Oda's track record, it's probably going to circle back to be something very depressing. Like she was abused or something as a child, or she was living on her own or something, like nobody cared about her. So she ended up eating all this food in order to to suppress these kind of feelings, and she just, I don't know, had a very unique body or something, and it just, digests really fast. I don't know, but it's probably going to be something very depressing by the end of it. Speaking of food, her favorite food from what we've seen, I mean, she'll eat pretty much anything, but her favorite food is pizza. And in preparation for this video, I've actually ordered a pizza, and it has pineapples on it. I've never tried pineapples with pizza, so let's give that a shot right here and see if that's something I enjoy. If I do enjoy it, though, I'm worried half my subscribers are just gonna, pack their shit and leave. Because, like, Tekking, look, I'm with you. It's okay. I can deal with the cringe, and I can deal with the fact that some of your theories are not right and crap, and you're grasping at straws, but there's one thing I simply cannot stand, and that is a YouTuber that enjoys pineapples on his pizza. I'm sorry, I'm out of here. Alright, let's try this out. Oh, and the pineapple falls off right. I'm about to try to eat it. Alright, let's try this. Here we go. I like it. I'm sorry. The pineapple verdict has been stated. It's not bad. I don't think I got a lot of pineapple on that one bite, but it was pretty good. I like the sweetness and then with the sauce and the cheese. I think it worked, guys. This is the first time in my life I'm ever actually curious of whether or not there is really something wrong with me. Right, what were we talking about again? Oh, right, Bonney, yes. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Okay, so, we first meet Bonney, during the Sabaody Archipelago arc, along with all the other members of the worst generation, the Supernovas, which, by the way, that's something I get told a lot. Like, why are you calling them the Supernovas? I think that was just something that was added in the Viz translations in the English tankobons, and I think the actual translation is, like, the Super Rookies, or just the Rookies, worst generation, something like that. But yeah, I always saw it as Supernovas in the English version of the tankobons, and that's something that always sounded cool to me, like the Supernovas, the 11 Supernovas, but whatever, I digress. Anyway, she was one of the more lower ranked ones in terms of bounty. I think you had a Rouge at the very bottom that was 108 million, and then I think above that you had Zoro, who at the time was 120 million, and then you had Bonney, who was 140 million. Of course, now Zoro's bounty is much higher than that, and Bonnie's and Rouge's bounty is also probably much higher as well. But at the time, she was rather low on the tier, and of course, bounty doesn't refer to actual battle strength or anything like that, just what kind of threat you are to the world government. The first time we see her, she's in a restaurant, the same restaurant as Beige and Hawkins are eating at, and she is acting like a complete slob. Now look, I understand this is One Piece and you have Luffy, but here's the thing. At least Luffy has some table manners. Some table manners, in the sense that Luffy can actually sit in a chair, and then, with a table in front of him, and then just eat off that table. He might eat very sloppily and very fast, but he can just, he at least sits down and eats most of the time. Bonney, on a completely different level, she's sitting on top of the freaking table, and just plate after plate, just shoving it down her freaking mouth, crumbs and crap all over, around her face, and just, basically like a child, throwing a tantrum, like a child, it's like, I need more pizza now! And all of her members of her crew are around her, it's okay, Bonney, we'll get you more pizza. And then, of course, you cut to the freaking kitchen where it's like a war zone, where it's everyone's panicking, we need to hurry up and get the pizza out. We just brought the pizza out. She already finished eating it. We need a backup pizza. But yeah, so she's even worse than Luffy in that respect. Just, freaking shouting and not having any regard for anybody else around her, just shoving food down her mouth. And this is something at first, first impressions of her are not really impressive. You're looking at her like, okay, this is just some slob, 5-year-old throwing a tantrum that just happens to be a very attractive, busty girl. So, interesting choice, Oda, but whatever, not really interested in much of her personality at that point. But this is actually flipped around a lot, to the point where I would say she was one of the more interesting rookies, in the sense of, implied backstory. So, the next time we see her, we see Zoro walking down the street, confronting Charlos, the world noble, and he's about to shoot Zoro, and Zoro has no idea what's going on, he has no idea who the guy really is, so Zoro's about to just cut him down, but then Bonney jumps in at the last minute, uses her Devil Fruit ability to age herself back to childhood, and then just, tackles Zoro, knocks him over, and then has a well-placed ketchup packet, or a blood packet to make it look like he really did get shot, and then just stay down, you freaking green-haired, moss-headed idiot, while I just play along here. And so that allows Charlos to get away, and then afterwards, Bonney goes back to her regular size, and just starts, berating Zoro, how dare you, why would you do that, you're a pirate as well, don't you know the pirate code, don't you know who that guy was, don't you know all this crap, and Zoro's like, what the frick are you blabbering about, by the way, weren't you just a little kid, Zoro is completely confused, he has no idea what's going on here, but Bonney, clearly, she's a quick thinker, on her feet, she knew right at that moment, holy crap, I gotta think fast, or else there's gonna be a freaking admiral heading to the island, and everyone's gonna get wiped out, so she thinks fast, gets the ketchup packets, which she probably had already on her, ketchup, turn into a child and then jump and just stay down. So that was pretty cool. I like that moment. Zoro doesn't really take any of her advice, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter anyway, because Luffy punches Charlos at the auction house, resulting in Kizaru arriving, which, resulted in Bonney even getting more pissed off. She was like, I'll never forgive them. That's, like I said, that's kind of her catchphrase. She says it a lot, after the, a whole event there, so she's now has sort of a grudge against the Straw Hats, kind of. I mean, she might not anymore, considering this just might be how she is. Like, every time she runs across anybody that even indirectly wrongs her, she's like, I'll never forgive them. You know, Bonney, the pizza delivery driver's gonna be 2 minutes late. I'll never forgive him. You know, maybe, I don't know how that works. She was one of the ones that were lucky in that she didn't have to directly confront a Pacifista or Kizaru or Sentomaru or Kuma. She was able to avoid all of that. The worst that she got was like the squadron of Marines coming at her, but using her Devil Fruit ability, she was able to render all of them incapacitated to the point where they could not fight. This is actually a really cool scene where Bonney and the rest of her crew are hanging out on top of a building, and then all of a sudden all the Marines before her just transform either into children or elderly people. And she's up there just laughing. So it seems to imply that her ability can be done over a wide range, you know, and we've already seen that before. We've seen that with Buggy's Barabara no Mi. Like, there's like a little, like an invisible sphere. Probably the most obvious example is Law's Oppi Oppi no Mi, you know, so maybe it's something along the lines with that, with Bonney's fruit. How it actually gets triggered, though, is something else for debate. You know, it actually, you know, implied that she needs to use her hands in some way, because Blackbeard had her tied up against a post with chains, and she was completely helpless. Now, they could have been Sea Prism Stone chains, for all we know. You know, how would Blackbeard get his hands on that? I don't know. He's Blackbeard. He could do whatever. But if we're just going along the lines that, you know, it's something that she needs to do with her hands, like some sort of movement, like, you know how Boa Hancock's Love, you know, fruit she actually has to do, like, the Mero, do, like, the shape of a heart. Maybe she doesn't necessarily have to do the shape of the heart, but a lot of her techniques involve some sort of movement, either the heart or pistol kiss. She has to, like, you know, kiss her finger and then make the thing, or something like that. No, pistol kiss is just smooch and then shot. And then there's the slave arrow, which she kisses her fingers and then makes the entire, like, heart and arrow shoot out. So, we've seen that before with devil fruits that have a finite area that they affect, and you have to use your hands in a movement in some way. So maybe that's something to do with Bonney. Like, Bonney was on top of this building, and then the Marines arrive, and they're all pointing their guns at her, like, you know, Jory Bonney of the South Blue, you know, put your hands up, you're under arrest. And then Bonney just, you know, oh, boys, just calm down, does something with her hands. Maybe she, you know, takes her left hand and does it in a counterclockwise motion, and then all of the Marines that are affected by that turn into children, and then she takes her other hand and she does it in a clockwise motion, and everybody that's affected by that turns, you know, older, into elderly people. So it could be something like that affects her hands, because later on, Blackbeard captures her, seemingly with no effort whatsoever. Then again, of course, Blackbeard has the ability to negate Devil Fruit abilities, but he wasn't actually staying in contact with Bonney. Bonney was chained up to a post with only her hands, I think, really bound, and she still wasn't able to affect anything around her. So either it was Sea Prism Stone, or either it's an ability that requires the direct use of her hands, because Blackbeard was not, like, staying in... Maybe that's how Blackbeard captured her, snuck up behind her, grabbed her, negated her Devil Fruit ability, and then just, like, beat her senseless and then chained her up. But the fact that she was chained up and didn't use her fruit, which she should be able to use, that seems to imply that. Something else that's very interesting with her Devil Fruit ability, and this is something that I don't think it's ever directly been addressed in the manga. Oda has addressed it, you know, off the record in the SBS and all that stuff. It's how whenever a Devil Fruit user has their ability that involves, like, breaking their body up like Buggy, their clothes are unaffected by that. Or anything, like you know how Chopper can turn into Monster Point and his hat changes with him, like, many times its own size. And people have questioned Oda about this, like, how come the clothing changes like that? Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And Oda's response is, like, if I drew the manga, you know, realistically, then there'd be way too much nudity. Like, every time that, you know, a zone user goes into their animal form, like, every time Dalton transforms into a bison, his clothing would get ripped off, and then he would be a naked bison, and then he turned back into a human, you'd see it dangling in the snow. So it would be like, you know, you don't design a manga like that. The one exception to this, though, seems to be Bonney's fruit, because whenever Bonney is in her adult form, she has very, you know, revealing tight clothing. She has, like, you know, the suspenders and, like, the crop top thing, and it's like you could see so much, like, midriff and like cleavage out to Tuesday, and very short shorts, and you'd think, oh, well, she just dresses very provocatively, but then she turns into a child, and you understand why she was dressed like that, because when she turns into a child, the clothing fits her more appropriately. But that just goes against all other forms of devil fruits that we've seen in the story so far, are, where the clothing does change with the fruit. Bonney is the lone exception to that. And also, on top of that, her crew has the same exact fashion choice. All their clothing is very tight as well. Apparently, whenever Bonney decides to change the ages of her crew, they remain the same as well. Maybe it could be something along the lines of, and I don't even know... this is not going to be a very long tangent, because I don't even want to go into it, because this is something that really doesn't matter, like clothing changing. Like, that's not really the crux of this. But let's just say that if, you know, Chopper, right, he tries on his hat, and it's a perfect fit for his reindeer form. Like, if Chopper had a really tiny hat, like, let's just say a ridiculously tiny hat, and he put that tiny hat on his head, if Chopper changed into a Monster Point, would that super, super tiny hat change into a giant hat, and then go back to a super, super tiny hat? So maybe it only affects clothing that actually properly fits you to begin with. But I'm not going, like I said, I'm going to stop it right there. I'm not even going to try to go into a tangent with that, because at this point, okay, Matt, you're arguing about clothing. Just move on. I'm like, okay, I will. A few more things is sort of like an addendum to her Devil Fruit abilities, and I know I really need to start writing scripts out for this video, because I'll do the whole video pretty much off the cuff, and then I'll forget something big in the discussion for later. But anyway, two things with her Devil Fruit. Number one, you might notice that whoever she affects with her Devil Fruit retains their memories. So if you have like a 35-year-old Marine that gets, regressed back into like an 8-year-old child, they will still retain the memories they had when they were 35. It's just now they are a child, so they're obviously, not as physically capable as an adult, and it also seems to be like in their emotional state, like the Marines that got turned into children, began to cry, because that's how a child would deal with like a situation like that, but they do retain their memories, and we've already seen this with Bonney. When Bonney transforms into a little kid, she has the same amount of memories, and she can even, like I said, with the metabolism thing, she can even change like certain parts of her body. Like when she was a child, I think this was only in the anime, but she was able to speak in a child's voice, but then to Zoro she was able to like whisper to him, like, just stay down, dumbass, basically in her adult voice, so she can like mix and control it at will. And one more thing about her Devil Fruit, and it's how exactly far back she can regress you, or if she can, bring time forward. And that's, if she really had full reign over it, she would be able to turn you into like a fetus and you would be dead, or she could age you into a skeleton and you would be dead, unless you're Brooke, yo ho ho ho. But no, really, why doesn't she do that? I'm gonna say she can't, really. I mean, if she could do that, that would be such a devastating Devil Fruit. It would be an instant kill, basically. Or rather, maybe she could do it. It would just take more effort on her part, something that she didn't have time to do, or something of that nature. Maybe she likes to toy with her opponents, like the Marines. She was kind of laughing at them. She didn't want to kill them, just kind of give them a taste of, just like, hey, you're a bunch of children and old men now, so that's funny to me. But yeah, I think if it was, easy for her to do that, just like snap her fingers and then turn someone back into a fetus and then, be an instant kill, I think she would have done it already. But yeah, that's what the case there. And also, we don't know if her Devil Fruit can affect objects yet. We don't know if that's a thing. We've only seen it affect other people and herself, so I'm assuming that it can only be affecting people. That's how her Devil Fruit works. I think if she could turn anything back in time, I think that would be a little bit too broken, kind of like Orihime's Orihime's Devil Fruit ability. Orihime's, Santen Keshun ability from Bleach, and that was kind of broken in a few respects as well, kind of very inconsistent. So I think it's best just to keep it with people. He manages to escape the Saboni archipelago, no problem. The next time we see her is at Marineford. We actually get to see her ship, which looks honestly something like you would see from the Big Mom pirate crew. It's shaped like a cake, or we don't get to see the full view of it, but from what we do see, it has like an icing design and stuff, and that makes sense given Jory Bonney's design, and this is where we get into something else with her. I made a theory video once where I was discussing her connections to the Big Mom pirates, and I assumed at that point maybe she had some connection to Mother Caramel. Maybe she was Mother Caramel. Considering she has an aging fruit, anything goes. Like she's not Mother Caramel. That's already been debunked. I'm just saying that don't look at Bonney and think like, oh yeah, she's definitely, this young lady. Like this is her default. She could be much older. She could be much younger. And I think Oda, even when stating the ages of the Devil Fruit users, I think he stated, Bonney's age was like somewhere in her 20s, like 22 or something. But I think he also added a note that, her devil fruit allows this to change and alter. So maybe Oda wants, like, maybe this is the age she chooses to be in most of the time. Why wouldn't she be? This is like the prime of her youth and all that stuff. So of course she would want to stay in her heyday, but that might not be her actual age. It might be it might not even be like super old, like 80, and she's looking like a 22-year-old. She could be like in her 40s and deciding to look like a 22-year-old or something of that nature. She could also be quite younger, but considering how she acts and her temperament and the way she acts very childish around in restaurants and stuff, she could be actually quite younger. Who knows? And it seems the fact that she gets to hold grudges, but I could actually see that either way. I could see a child holding a grudge for something really petty, and I can also see an older person, holding a grudge for a very long time. So I guess that could go either way. But I really have to mention the massive amounts of similarities between her and Big Mom and the Big Mom Pirates. The fact that she has pink hair, Big Mom has pink hair. The fact that she eats a bunch, Big Mom eats a bunch. The lipstick is the same. You have a ship that's designed after a cake, and Whole Cake Island is the base of operations for Big Mom. Even her devil fruit, Big Mom's thing with the soul fruit, she can rip lifespan out of you in the form of your soul, and so you die a lot sooner. And Jory Bonney can do aging stuff, so that's kind of similar, at least a little bit. I'm just saying there might be some connection there, but whatever. So, she's at Marineford, she's watching the war, and she actually, interestingly enough, she openly weeps when Ace dies and Whitebeard dies. That she's there, you see her actually crying her eyes out, like she had a deep respect for them. Like Rayleigh, for instance. Rayleigh was seen weeping as well after he saw the death of Whitebeard, and Jory Bonney was crying as well. So this maybe lends to the idea that maybe she's a little bit older than that, than what she's letting on, but also the fact that she had quite a bit of respect for Whitebeard or maybe Ace. I don't see Ace maybe too much, but Whitebeard definitely. She talked to Zoro about like you're a pirate, so you should know the pirate code. Like she's very dedicated to this piratey way of life. So she would definitely probably have looked up to Whitebeard as a symbol of that. Like that's what a pirate really is right there, embodied in Edward Newgate, embodied in Whitebeard. And then so when Whitebeard passed away, not really so much passed away as got unloaded with freaking cannonballs and spears and got shot a shit ton of times by Blackbeard's pirate crew, but whatever, what have you. Oh, and Magma punched a few times by Akainu. I always forget that. That was also probably a major contributor to Whitebeard's death. Maybe a little bit. Whitebeard goes to the doctor. I'm like, hey, doc, I'm not feeling too well. And be like, well, maybe it's because you have 2 smoldering magma holes in your freaking chest. Maybe that may have something to do with it. Like, I thought my chest was a little tight. Feeling a little hot up in here. You only have this many minutes to live, sir. I'm sorry. Ugh. But anyway, yeah, so you had Bonney crying there, which implied some connection there with Whitebeard. After the war at Marineford, she heads into the New World. She eventually end up being captured by Blackbeard. Maybe Blackbeard did something with his ability, negated her power, so then she gets captured. They beat the crap out of her crew. They all chained up, and Blackbeard's plan here was to trade Bonney to the Marines for a new ship, like a new Navy battleship to, properly travel, because they were just traveling on their shitty raft up to this point. And they also had San Juan Wolf with them, which was weird why the Blackbeard would think that the Marines would have a ship big enough to, hold San Juan Wolf. Like, the guy is literally the size of the Marineford, like, headquarters. Like, the guy is, like, the size of a small mountain. Like, there's no way you would have a ship. The Marines would have a ship big enough to hold this guy. He's, like, 3 or 4, 5 times the size of a normal giant, Okay, well, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just ignore the logic. Akainu shows up. Blackbeard and the other pirates, they just hightail it. They're just like, oh, I'm not dealing with that guy today. And he leaves. And then you have just Akainu arriving on the island with the chained up Bonney. We can assume Akainu brought her into custody. And as say it with me, kids, Bonnie's like, I will never forgive them. I have a grudge against them, whatever. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the weird gap that we don't know. I was actually kind of upset when I saw that. I remember first reading that chapter with Bonney being captured, and I felt so bad. I'm like, I was so interested on what was going to go down with Bonney now, and she's the first one to get captured. She's the first of the freaking Supernovas to get captured by the Marines. So what? We're not going to get her in the New World in part 2? She's just going to be thrown and impelled down, and that's all she is. That's all she wrote. But thankfully, luckily, somehow, some way, Bonney managed to escape. We don't know if she was with the rest of her crew, but she managed to escape and is now in the New World proper. We see her after the events of Punk Hazard, I believe. She's on some random winter island. She's, she used her abilities. She turned into an old lady to steal a piece of pizza, and then she ran away, and then she turned into a little kid. And so when the pizza, pizzeria owner was chasing after her, like, where was that old lady that stole my pizza? She's the little kid, so she got away from it. And she's reading the newspaper, and she saw what happened with Luffy and Law. Maybe this was after Dressrosa. I'm actually thinking about it now. It might not have been after Punk Hazard, after Dressrosa, because I think she read the article stating that Luffy and Law were in cahoots, they were allies, but they also took down Doflamingo, and I think she was, like, praising them. So back on, Sabaody, she was like, I'll never forgive the Straw Hats for calling a freaking admiral here, but later on, she's, like, commending them and Law for doing what they did. So maybe it is, like, a childish kind of grudge thing, where she just, everybody that wrongs her, even in the slightest, she has a grudge against, but then they do something nice for her, like, you want a piece of candy? And you're like, okay, all is forgiven, I like you now. Maybe it's something along those lines, I don't know. But that's the last time we see her. We don't see her crew with her. We don't know what was up. We just see her wearing, like, a cloak and running around this random island. We don't even know where it was at. But she's free. Whether that means she somehow... I know she didn't escape from Akainu, because Akainu never would have let that happen. But maybe when she was being transferred, maybe Akainu brought her back to, like, a marine base, and, like, pending transfer to Impel Down, they chucked her into this marine base. Akainu left, went back to headquarters, went back for looking for for Blackbeard. And then while she was just in this one group, maybe someone let their guard down or something, and then she managed to use her ability to escape. Something along those lines, I think, would make much more sense than her escaping or overpowering Akainu in any way, shape, or form, because that just would not go down. I really want to see more of her in the future. I really think it's going to be a case where she's a lot older than we think she is. That just means, I mean, she could be younger too, but if she's older, that lends to be a much more interesting backstory with her. Like if we find out she's in her 40s or 50s or 60s, like we could have this whole other backstory where she was connected to a lot of other, maybe she did have a past with Whitebeard, maybe she did have a past with some of the other Yonko or Big Mom in some way before that. Maybe it's something like she's not one of Big Mom's children, but maybe she met Big Mom earlier on in her pirate career, and maybe she took inspiration from Big Mom, because remember, she was like weeping after Whitebeard died, so maybe she looked at Whitebeard like, this is a Yonko, this is what a pirate should be. Maybe she viewed Big Mom in a similar light, like, this is a true pirate right here. This is a badass woman that managed to get really strong. She has an awesome devil fruit, and she took over this island, Totland, and maybe that was her inspiration, was Big Mom back in her heyday, back when Big Mom was like in her 20s or 30s. Maybe Bonney was a teenager or younger, and she looked up to her, and that's why she designed maybe she had dyed her hair pink or something. I don't know what I mean. And then she went after it in the same way that Big Mom would, and that's the reason she has that kind of motive around her. Still doesn't necessarily explain the whole massive amounts of gluttony she has. It might be something more genetic for Big Mom, and that, like, a connection there, but whatever. But yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about her ability, her devil fruit? I think in terms of, like, the way it functions, I think it's rather simple. Aside from it having maybe something to do with your hands, I think it's something very simple, just, turning your age back or forward. Whether there's a time limit on this, whether you change it back to a child, they remain a child for a certain amount of time, or as long as Bonney is around them or something, who knows how that works, or how it's triggered, the name of the fruit, why she, goes around and seems to have so many grudges against so many people, her dedication to the pirate life. How does that connect anything back to that? And I think the biggest question here with Bonney is, what do you think her true age is? Do you think she's truly, 20-something, like that's just how she is? Or she's a lot older, she's a lot younger? Let me know below. And how would you like Bonney to be reintroduced back into the story? How would you like her to meet with the Straw Hats or Law, or, have an alliance with them or something like that? Because, that does seem to be a thing with the Supernovas as of late. They're all either, allying together to try to take down a Yonko. Law and Luffy ally together to take down Kaido. You have Kid and Killer, and Hawkins and Apu with the Kaido thing, Beige and the Straw Hats. So you see the rookies banding together. So who would you like to see Bonney, team up with in an alliance if she was going to go that way with it? But yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you don't hate me too bad for enjoying or tolerating pineapples on my pizza. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry if I disappointed you all. Alright, everybody. You have happy Arbor Day to all, and to all a good 6 o'clock in the evening. Later, everybody. I'm so disappointed in myself.